Number 1.
Back in college, my friends and I got into the habit of exploring abandoned buildings. We've seen some incredible places and have gotten some pretty cool souvenirs. I don't really condone taking stuff out from some buildings, but if it's about to be torn down and contractors have taken out everything they seem to be worth something, then I'll gladly take that depression glass they left behind. I digress. It's a small group of friends that goes exploring with me, and I love introducing new people to it. A friend of mine had asked me on several occasions if I could take him somewhere because he never went exploring before. I decided to take him to an old paper factory that didn't have much inside, but had an absolutely beautiful view of the city from the roof. Also, it was incredibly easy to get in and out of. We went with a few other people, but 2 of my friends had decided to wait outside for us since they'd been in the building a few too many times to find it interesting anymore. As we went to climb inside, a drunk couple came out, and we asked if there were any people inside. They said they thought it was mostly empty, but they heard someone banging around a few floors up that startled them out. They said he sounded angry and maybe we should avoid the roof. Since we weren't there to drink or anything, the roof was our only goal. We decided we'll take our chances and head up. After all, it's a massive building and we didn't think we would run into the guy. We walk up 10 flights of stairs and then climb the ladder to the roof. My friend is impressed and the view is awesome. As we were about to head back down, my friend, waiting on the street, calls us. He says that a man has passed out in the street and that the 2 of them pulled him out of the way of traffic and called an ambulance for him. They suggest we wait out on the roof to avoid exiting the building while the cops are there. Neither of us can afford the $5,000 fine or 2-week jail time just for looking the city from an abandoned building. We wait, but we probably shouldn't have waited on the roof. We get the all clear from my friend to come down and we head to the ladder. My friend goes first and then our flashlight dies. The ladder is tricky to get onto when you can't see it and it's missing some rungs, so I come down very slowly in the dark, afraid of hurting myself of course. I hop down and my friend tells me very quietly that he hears someone in the room next door to us. I shrug it off. We already know people are in the building. Then the screaming starts. At first, it almost sounds like one of my friends who waited outside yelling my name. I hesitate at the top of the stairs, and just outside the door of the room the screaming is coming from, trying to decide if it's him and he's playing some sort of a prank. The guy I came into the building with grabs my wrist and we start running down the stairs. At this point, it's obvious it's not my friend and it's just a guttural, intense screaming. We start running down the stairs and then I hear really loud banging to go with the screaming. It sounds like this guy has a very heavy object that he's swinging at the walls and exposed pipes with. There is only 1 flight of stairs because every other way down is out of order freight elevators. So, we're trapped in the stairwell and it's 10 flights till we reach the ground floor and have to book it to the opposite side of this factory and back out the hole we climbed through. Besides, screaming and swinging that heavy object, we hear him barreling down the stairs behind us, but he's at least 1 floor behind. Whatever he's using to hit the walls and pipes with is clearly enough to do some damage to our skulls, because a bit of brick chipped off the wall follows us down the steps, and that's when my friend grabs my wrist again and throws me through the nearest door. We've only made it down 3 floors, and at the beginning of each flight of stairs there's 1 door that opens onto the entire level. In other words, it is painfully obvious where we've gone. After flying into this room, we notice it is being gutted like every other floor. More of the windows are boarded up, and it's very dark. All that's in the room to hide behind are some pillars. We get behind one and huddle together. This guy stops outside the doorway to the room we're in, and he's still screaming. It is terrifying. Then he starts swinging his weapon around and slamming it into the door frame. We're sure he's going to come in, and the only way out is the door that he's currently standing in. Neither of us never look around the pillar to see the guy, and we have no idea what his weapon is. Nearly 4 minutes pass, and he hasn't stopped screaming. For whatever reason, he doesn't come into the room that we're in, but starts running down the stairs. We can hear him hitting pipes and smacking the walls, and we just wait. We have 7 floors to go down, and we could pass him in any doorway on the way down. Eventually, the screaming and the banging stops, but we still think we should wait. That's when we hear something from a different corner of our room. There is just enough light from a window in the back that hasn't been boarded up, and we see a figure get off of the floor. This person has been in the room with us the entire 7 or 8 minutes we've been in here, and they haven't let on until now. This person, who's in front of the only light source, so we just see a totally black figure, is now shuffling towards us without making a sound. It's exactly like a zombie movie, and we make it for a run. We run as fast as we could. We don't bother to find out what this person's deal is, and temporarily forget about the first, clearly dangerous guy. For an asthmatic, I hauled ass down the stairs and never paused to catch my breath even once. As we were reaching the bottom of the stairwell, the screaming starts again. It's coming from the room next to us, but we don't stop running. The hole in the wall that we climb through to get into the building is yards away, and this man comes crashing out of the room behind us. We never look back and climb through the hole so fast I don't even remember doing it. Our 2 friends are waiting for us and we throw ourselves into the car. They asked what happened because apparently that man was so loud that they could hear him screaming and breaking things from outside the building. They thought we were making all that noise and were going to give it a few minutes before calling us to remind us that the police were still patrolling the area for drunk, underage college students, and we should probably shut the fuck up. We told them what happened and then decided to carry on with our plans for the night, because a beer was totally necessary after that.
Number 2.
Abandoned buildings are amazing. My mother studied historical preservation in Georgia, so a love of dilapidated and abandoned structures is in my blood. When you pair this interest with my love of photography, you have a match in heaven, and fortunately this pairing is seen as favourable by many of my friends as well. As a rule, I never enter an abandoned place myself. This has less to do with caution or fear. As a stocky, bearded 22-year-old male, I don't often fear for my safety, but it's primarily for physical safety reasons. When a structure has been left to rot for X number of years, there is a decent chance that you could go through the floor if you're not careful. Where I live, in southwestern Ohio, there are many exploration opportunities to be found, especially if you take 15 minutes to cross to Indiana. In Richmond, on one of the main strips before you hit the center of the city, there is a massive hospital that has been abandoned since the early 2000s. I have known about the location for ages, as my grandfather had stayed there before it closed during his battle with lung cancer. Last year, I finally found the time and the energy to drive up with my friend Luke to check it out. We got there around 2 PM, which gave us roughly 2 hours before dusk would begin. For pictures and for safety, we had agreed that daylight was a must for this expedition. Upon entering the hospital, it became immediately clear that we were far from the first people to ever visit. The entire place had been gutted, and there was a graffiti everywhere. The walls were sporting comforting phrases like, "We're watching you," and "Leave my house now." The bulk of the trip was uneventful. We got some great shots and covered some of the primary hospital wings, steering clear of the psych wards and cancer centers. As we gradually made our way up the stairwell to each new floor, we began to notice a pattern. At each landing was a door, and each door had been propped open by a massive wedge of cement or other debris. The doors were shockingly heavy, so we assumed roving graffiti artists and vandals had opted for easier floor access. Granted, it seemed odd, but we didn't think much about it until we were on the 7th floor. I was in one of the old bedrooms, getting a shot of some curtains while Luke stood in the doorway. Suddenly, a massive boom sounded from the stairwell we had come from, causing Luke and I to jolt upright. It sounded like he had come from below us, like one of the doors had suddenly slammed. The problem was that none of the doors could have slammed, at least not on their own. Not only were they separated from the doorframe by massive chunks of debris, but they were far too heavy to have caught wind. The only way a door could have slammed was if someone had stood back, held it fully open, and then let it go. Not a behavior that would normally engage without purpose. After a few seconds of staring at each other with wide eyes, we decided it was time to go. This meant finding another way down, as our previous way was currently occupied by someone or something. There were these little green arrows spray painted all over the building, and on a gut decision, we decided to try and follow them. The ones on this floor all had the word exit written above them, so we felt good about it. It wasn't until we had been following the arrows for about 5 minutes or so that we realized that wherever these arrows were taking us, it wasn't out of the building. In our fear and desire to leave as quickly as possible, we had neglected to realize that the arrows were taking us deeper into the center of the building. The windows were becoming less frequent, everything was darker, and everything was damp. That was the weirdest part, how damp everything was. We had gone from a destroyed but dried building into an area that was so wet and rife with mold that the walls and floors were going greenish brown. We never found out what was at the end of the path, or who was leading us or pushing us there. After turning back, we found an emergency exit in the corner of the building of the hallway that we were able to climb down and escape from. We never saw anyone, but we're sure they saw us. The hospital was mostly windows, which means that literally anyone looking out would have been able to see us coming and going. I'm glad we didn't go further into the dark and wet areas. Who knows what would have been waiting for us out there, but I'm sure that it would have been nothing good. The door, the spray paint directions, it all just seemed too sinister and intentional to be anything like an innocent vandal's prank. The entire time we were following the arrows, something just felt off. The hair on the back of my neck was standing the whole time, and I was frankly terrified.
Number 3.
One of my favorite activities is exploring old, abandoned buildings. I've seen quite a few strange things during these trips, but one experience still creeps me out to this day. A few years ago, I found a long-forgotten water refinery through the help of online exploration communities and Google Earth. Although it's stupid, I always go to places for the first time alone, partly for the thrill and partly because if something bad were to happen, I would feel terrible having brought someone else into that situation. So, I make plans to head there the next day after my classes let out. The day of the trip, I pack up my camera and water bottle and set off following my hand-drawn map. After an hour or two of biking, I finally arrive at the place, which is the picture that you see on the screen. Luckily, this place had an old bike path dead end just past it. All the pictures that you will see on the screen are the pictures that I've taken from the place. It was completely overtaken by vegetation, with trees growing up through and around the buildings, not to mention that the actual buildings were just disintegrating, with paint peeling off every wall and ceiling. I took my time scouring each of the buildings, looking around for anything interesting. I found hundreds of broken windows, weird broken spheres, and some kind of a giant oven. After an hour or two of successful exploring, I decided to head off happy with an SD card full of pictures. Soon, after I pulled my bike back out through the hole in the fence I entered, I started biking away. I remembered there was one last shot I wanted to get. I'm pretty insistent on getting the shots I want, and didn't know if I would ever come back, so I decided to just tough it out, ride back and take the picture. As I was going back, I saw a lone man dressed in old clothes walking down this bike trail away from the dead end. I thought it was kind of a strange path for someone to walk on, and something in me said, "Don't let him see you go in there." I biked past him and gave him a slight head nod, and figured I'll bike all the way to the end of the trail, turn around. By the time I get back, he'd be long gone, having continued in the opposite direction. I take my time to get to the end and turn around, and as I head back towards the hole in the fence, I see him there, staring at me, and walking back towards the dead end from which he came. He had a happy look on his face, but it wasn't the kind of happiness that made me feel at ease in any way. The best way I could describe it is that he looks like he'd just been told a dirty joke, and was trying to contain it. I knew I had to do something as I was literally trapped between him and a dead end. I decided to play it cool once more, but be ready to drop everything and run if things got hairy. As I get closer and closer to him, I can see his facial expression clearer, and it's not someone I want to be in the same state with, let alone this creepy ass bike path. I'm slightly cursing myself for going back for one picture as I slowly get closer to him. Finally, I'm about 20 feet away from him, and he calls out,
I sure would like a ride. It's hot out here. Mind if I jump on?
As soon as I hear this, I realize it's no longer my brain falsely interpreting something as creepy. I pick up speed and rush past him, putting as much space between us as I can. He's a good distance behind me now, and I look back and see that he's once again turned around and following me. At this point I bolt, sprinting down the bike path and back onto the main road. Interestingly, I stop at a nearby gas station on the way home to get a refill on my Gatoroid. I see a cop there and told him that I just rode down the old bike path by this park. He looked at me, sort of bewildered as to why a person would ride out there, or at least that was what I guessed from behind his sunglasses. And he told me that he didn't recommend people going there, especially alone, as some shady characters like to hang out there.
Number 4.
I'm a 19-year-old female, and a few years ago, I'd say I was about 16, me and a friend, male of mine, decided to go drive around in the country and look for some cool old houses that are still hanging around. We live in a very small town in Kansas, so we had a ton of country to explore. We had been driving for an hour or so, just taking random turns, and had found a few houses already. We thought we spotted a building or something in some trees, and as we got closer we discovered it was a small shed, but not too far from the shed was a small rundown house. We pulled up the dirt driveway, and laying in the middle of the driveway was half a carcass of a deer. It was strange, but we lived in Kansas and we were practically in the middle of nowhere, so we figured a mountain lion had gotten it or something. As we came up closer to the house though, we noticed that there wasn't just one deer. There were probably close to 20 or 30 deer that were half gone, just laying on the yard around the house. We got out of the truck and started to walk up to the house, still thinking that it was just some weird coincidence that these deer had all died here. My friend wanted to see inside of the house, but I wasn't really for that idea, so I stayed outside. I walked around a little, but what made me really run for the truck was the hundreds of bones laying around in the yard. I mean hundreds. It was so weird and so creepy that it made me fly to the truck. As soon as I closed the door, my friend came tearing out of the house as fast as he could, with this look of pure terror and disgust on his face. He jumped in, started the truck, and we took off down the road. We got a little further down the road when he finally looked at me and said that there were dead animals everywhere in that house. I don't know what was going on in there. Maybe some legal hunting going on or something. Although I don't know why anyone would hunt small animals like skunks and possums. Anyways, it was super creepy, and we've never gone poking around abandoned houses again. Hey guys, it's that Grim Raider here. So, thank you very much for listening through that. I appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Come on, you've got to subscribe. I mean, you might as well just slap a like, just throw in a comment here and there, you know, just because you can, really. I mean, nothing's stopping you from doing it, right? No, but seriously, thank you very much for listening through. If you want to listen to more stories like this, on the screen, you can click on either video, that's the 2 previous videos, or you can go in the description and there's also a link to the previous video. There's also a playlist link which will lead you to a lot of videos very similar to this with hundreds of awesome stories like these. So yeah, with that I leave you with thank you very much, and you'll hear from me very soon.